All right, good evening. Good evening. I'd now like to bring the regular evening meeting of the Township of Langley Council to order. And the first item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Davis. All those in favor? Opposed and carries. Move on to adoption of the minutes for the regular evening meeting of May 27th and the public hearing meeting of May 27th. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Kunst. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those, hang on, Councillor Long, sorry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Are you doing the public hearing minutes?
Yes, they're both.
There was an error there where it said that something was illegible, but it was actually, should have been illegible, but it says it was ineligible.
That's
eligible,
right.
okay, so
Yeah,
typo.
Pretty good that I read the whole thing.
It's amazing.
That's in the comments made by Mr. Lightfoot.
Okay.
It should say not
Thank you. So we got
legible,
that
not
correction.
illegible.
We got that correction, Ms. Bauer? Okay, thank you. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. And so now we move on to delegations. First delegation is Jessica Yaniv. Jessica, please come forward.
So good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. My name is Jessica. I live in Walnut Grove, and today I'm here to talk about conversion therapy and getting it banned. And I'm really hoping you all refer this over to staff. So basically, again, my presentation is in regards to banning conversion therapy practices in the Township of Langley and also creating anti-bullying programs to prevent cyberbullying and working with the federal and provincial government to restrict access to common cyberbullying websites and getting this done before we protect the trees. So first off is my recommendation is for the Township of Langley to suspend the business licenses of any business practicing conversion therapy and to restrict the granting of licenses to businesses wanting to practice conversion therapy, affirmation therapy, and intervention therapy, and to also work with the provincial and the federal government to restrict web access to common bullying and harmful sites such as 8chan, 4chan, KF, I'm not going to say the name of that site, and other LOLCal properties, and also make it a crime to legally access these sites. We don't need another Amanda Todd. I'm just going to make it really clear. We don't need that. And also to make it illegal to access these sites via alternate mechanisms. And also something really important, which I made note of at the town hall meeting, is we don't have a CAR 67, which is actually really important. So my other recommendation is to implement a CAR 67 with the Langley RCMP, staffed by a member of the RCMP who's currently in the mental health division and trained in cyberbullying. One constable that I had a little bit of some relationships with personally is Constable Yo, really good constable that knows a lot about this. With also a message to shut down, investigate, and prosecute those involved. And also, to make it a bylaw offense, like where essentially things become below the threshold of criminal harassment, to start using like the municipal level potentially in this if we can. So next is these therapies are really, really, really harmful. So these are basically pseudoscientific practices used with the intentions of converting an individual's sexuality or gender identity into alignment with the heterosexual and cisgender minority. So it includes things such as religious rites, behavioral modification therapy, medication use, and electroshock therapy or lobotomy. These are these are discipleship courses for people who are forced to heal unwanted self-identified same-sex attraction. So basically, it's not okay to convert people. So what I'm seeking is a bylaw amendment to prohibit the provision of conversion therapy, also known as intervention therapy services, by licensed businesses and individuals, thus protecting the vulnerable populations of the Township of Langley, including youth as well as sexual and gender minorities. So where it gets a little bit tricky, it would also apply to religious organizations who practice conversion therapy. So some businesses who have come out against conversion and intervention therapy include the Canadian Psychological Association and the Canadian Association of, or the CSW, and that's their little statement there. I'll let you guys read that. And basically, conversion therapy is really problematic, as they state, because it presupposes that being gay, queer, or trans is a problem, and that people should want to change. So my question is, why is there no current ban with the Township of Langley being inclusive with the social sustainability strategy coming into play? So conversion therapy flies in the face of being an open and inclusive city. And as I stated, with the Township of Langley's social sustainability strategy and the TOL being inclusive, why isn't this not a priority? The TOL needs to protect people. And the citizens, sorry, just getting off the flu here. The citizens of the Township of Langley first before the trees become protected. The City of Vancouver did it. In 2017, we can do it too. BC Green Party has also introduced legislation to ban this. Their bill, as the state, supports those with diverse sexualities, gender identities, and expressions. It sends a clear message that it's okay to be who you are, that your elected officials and those in positions of power hear you and will act now to protect your human rights. You guys are elected, please do this. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then. Next delegation is Dana Garcia Annan from the Army Cadet League of British Columbia.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Dana Garcia Annan, and I'm from the Army Cadet League of BC. And we have a little presentation to the Township of Langley for their continued support with the cadet program, not only here in Langley, but also with our Vimy Parade that we've been doing for 5 years now in the Fraser Valley. So I'm not sure if everybody's aware, I know a few of the councillors are, but in 2010, we opened an Army Cadet League here in the township with 11 cadets. 9 years later, we have 86 cadets on parade. We are continuing to grow within your community, and I have a couple of youth that would like to share their experience.
Thank you. Welcome here.
Evening. I'm Master Corporal Malcolm. Some things cadets has taught me is how to be more respectful and disciplined and organized, and just so much more. It gave me the confidence to get in a canoe for the first time despite my fears, and has given me many opportunities to make new friends and go on trips that I never thought I would get to if I hadn't joined Army Cadets. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cadet Sergeant Tavish McKinnon, and I've been a member of the 2277 Seaforth Highlanders for almost 5 years. Throughout those 5 years, I have had the honor of meeting some of the best people I've ever known. Many of these cadets and officers were strong role models to me as a young cadet, and it is through them and my experiences in the program that I have learned some of the most important life lessons I will ever receive. Without the cadet program, I would not have the skills, experience, and confidence I have today, and I am extremely thankful to have ever been a part of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just have a certificate here to present to Mayor and Council, just to thank you for your continued support within the township, as well as with our Fraser Valley Vimy Parade. And we'd really like to thank you guys for your continued support.
Thank you very much.
He was in there. Oh, he's coming. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I missed the parade this year because we were out of town, I guess.
Thank you for that. And later in my mayor's report, I mentioned the parade, the year-end. What do you?
The annual ceremonial review.
Yes, the ceremony that I attended, the review, is. I'm always so impressed with the abilities of these young people in marching and dress and deportment and some of the skills that they're learning, and I really enjoy going to those. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I always look forward to them. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
One question only of Dana or Deb. I was asked, you got it with the Seaforth Highlanders, I understand, that if someone from the Seaforth Highlanders happens to arrive tonight, there's a question I was asked. What is the Black Bear?
It's a bagpipe song, a bagpipe tune that you play on the bagpipes. There's a special bass drum part to it.
That's right.
There's a part where you yell, "Oi."
That's right, oi. Thank you very much. That was the correct answer.
Well, thank you very much. The next delegation is Christy Chiteau. And I'm probably pronounced your name wrong. I'm sorry.
Juteau.
Juteau, okay.
Toad?
Oh, it didn't. It's okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Christy Juteau. I'm a biologist and conservation science director for Rasha Canada. And with me tonight is Emily Walker, one of our conservation science interns, who's been with us since February and studying the toads. So tonight we want to bring your attention to these neighbors of ours, the toads, and ultimately prevent this from happening, if I can do that. Okay. And we are based at Arasha, the large dot on the map there, the large red dot, and which is in Surrey, but just 1 block away from the border of Langley. And we are tonight going to be talking about a site that's just inside that boundary in the Fern Ridge neighborhood. So this is a closer look at the site. We're talking about these 2 wetlands between 196 and 200th and 16th and 20th Avenue. These are privately owned wetlands that were previously gravel mines, and they're 2 to 5 acre parcels, about 6 owners per wetland. And they both these wetlands serve as breeding habitat for the western toad. And in addition to the toad, there are a number of other species at risk that use these wetlands. There are the northern red-legged frog, barn swallows, and great blue heron, as well as a rare plant called Vancouver Island beggarticks. And now Emily's going to share a little bit about why we should care about these toads.
So the western toad is an IUCN red-listed species, and it's also classified as a blue-listed species at risk under the Species at Risk Act. It's about between 6 and 12 centimetres long, and you can usually most easily identify it through a white or light-coloured stripe down the centre of its back. One of the most impressive and spectacular parts of their life cycle is when the juveniles all leave the ponds they were laid as eggs in, and they set out into the surrounding area. While some amphibian species do this in a gradual or phased approach, the western toads juveniles all do this at once, and this creates a massive mass migration event that can be tens of thousands of individuals strong. This can, however, lead to huge mortality problems as the toads attempt to cross their most dangerous adversary, which are the roads. And here you can see a diagram of the toad's life cycle. So you can see that they move at several different points in the year, but by far the biggest migration that they have is the one in the summer when the juveniles move away from the ponds that the adults laid the eggs in. So this is just a small video from 2017, so in the area that we're looking at, and it kind of gives a bit of an idea of the volume of toads that we sometimes get. So the bulk of the migration usually happens between 3 or 4 weeks, and usually from late June until mid-July, and there can be great variation in the numbers of toads that we see, but usually the routes that they take are relatively consistent annually, and Usually the hotspots are in the middle of 196th Street, 20th Avenue, 200th Street, and on the junction of 197A Street and 18th Avenue. And whilst the junction is a bit of a hotspot, it's on a quiet residential road, so the roads we are most concerned about are 196th, 20th Avenue and 200th Street.
So a request like we made last year is to have a temporary road closure on 20th Avenue and 196th Street. We have just to mitigate, just for 1 to 2 weeks during their peak migration period, to mitigate road crossing mortality. And we've spoken with Surrey Transportation staff, and they're in support of closing 196 for this temporary time period. And there are similar measures being taken in Chilliwack and in Whistler that we could talk about, those examples. We have been working quite closely with Planning Department in Langley as they work on the neighborhood plan for Fern Ridge, so that we can work creatively to build some things into the plan for future protective measures. But for now, it would be great if we could have a detour. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some questions. Council Arneson?
Yes, thank you very much for coming. I remember last year, and I was quite excited actually to go on the Toad Tour. It was totally awesome. So I'm sorry I can't help myself, but it was great. One of the things I noted was that even though there is some predictability generally about their migration, it can be a little bit off depending on the weather. So the day I happened to be there, we sort of looked in vain. I didn't have the right shoes to go searching out where it was a little more wet. But I assumed that this year, in coming a little bit earlier, and the road difficulties are less this time. So I think it's great that you've been able to have a discussion with the City of Surrey and that they're supportive. So I'm going to actually request that at the end of the meeting that township staff work with you to try and find some alternatives, because I think since this is a very special population and it's only in this one location, that we should go out of our way to try and protect them while they're making their annual migration. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for coming. Was it last year or the year before you came, or was it every year that you've come?
Last year we came to request the road closure. It was the year before that we had the really large event where there were about 96,000 individuals that we estimate. Yeah.
What did we do in the end? Just remind me, because I don't know if we did actually close the road. I think we just worked with you on signage or something.
So we were given direction not to close the road, but they did put up a couple signs that say Toad Crossing, just informing the public that toads may be there, so people may have the opportunity to slow down. But if you saw the size of these toads, even if you slow down, it might work in terms of deer or ducklings where you can see wildlife, you slow down. But with these toads, it actually doesn't matter if you're going slow or fast. You kill just as many.
And so would there be a more permanent solution down the line? Is that what you're working with planning on, maybe doing an underground?
Yeah, we're talking about developing some tunnels in road development design so that we could actually route them under the road and they wouldn't be as affected.
Okay, thanks so much.
So it'd be a temporary measure.
And
Thank you.
They are also in North Langley too, in the regional park. I've seen them. There's an area
Yes,
where they cross the trail.
in Derby Reach.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only other population in the area that I know.
Oh yeah, but I guess I haven't been out there at the right time. But I'll be looking for them this year.
Yeah,
okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we move on to bylaws for first, second, and third reading. And this is the 2019 Development Cost Charges bylaw number 5470. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Davis moved, seconder. A second. Councillor Kunst. Discussion on G1. Councillor Long.
So we had a discussion about the cost of living index, but that's built into these recommendations then, isn't it?
Yeah, so that would be, considering a policy which we could certainly ask staff to develop, but this would be separate from this. Yeah.
But it is. But the third recommendation is that the council directs staff to consider and deem appropriate an annual update.
That's right. Yeah, so that is part of it to give an
so
annual
that's,
update.
that's getting covered then. All right.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks. Councillor Woodward.
I just wanted to reference that in paragraph 3, based on this afternoon's discussion. If deemed appropriate, can we just deem it appropriate, or get some feedback? We it comes back to us either way to explain if it's appropriate or deemed not appropriate, rather than we just never hear about it again if it's not deemed appropriate.
Mr. Sefi?
Thank you, Your Worship. The intent was for staff to either bring forward a bylaw that reflects the CPI only, or to advise council that a more substantive increase might be necessary. If council is concerned that if deemed appropriate is not needed, and council wishes to hear regardless as to an annual update, certainly that can be addressed. But as I said, the intent was if staff deemed that a more thorough or a more substantive, I should say, increase is necessary beyond the CPI, then it won't be just the CPI, it will be something more than the CPI value.
Yeah, so could we maybe consider, Mr. Mayor, amending the third one to say that direct staff to present council with an annual update to the proposed DCC bylaw based on the Vancouver Consumer Price Act or other considerations, something along that line, so that we get sort of an annual update and then can consider that for the 4-year period, rather than the way it's worded here, which is it's only on the Vancouver Consumer Price Index, and it excludes sort of any other additional increases we may want to consider.
So then your amendment would be to remove the words "and if deemed appropriate"?
Or to consider, and if deemed appropriate, the council directs staff to present council with an annual update to the proposed DCC bylaw, potentially based on the Vancouver Price Index, something like that.
Or based on, yeah. So I just want to guess, okay.
Yeah.
I'm back a little bit. So you're removing the words "and if deemed appropriate." So
to consider, and if deemed appropriate.
Oh, and still leave that in there. Okay.
Direct staff to present council.
Okay, so council directs staff to consider, and if deemed appropriate, present council an update and an updated proposed DC bylaw.
Based on the Vancouver Price Index or other considerations, something that maybe there's a bit more
adding
leeway.
Or other considerations.
Just so there's a little more leeway than just the Vancouver Consumer Price Index.
Okay, so you want to add the words "or other considerations." I just want to boil it down to what the amendment is. Okay. Okay, so it's moved, seconded by Councillor Richter. So on the amendment, any discussion on the amendment? Seeing Councillor Richter on the amendment.
Yeah, I was quite surprised in the presentation we had today to see how much land costs have driven our need to update the DCC. So I would consider land to be one of the definite other factors we need to keep track of going forward. So definitely. I support this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate as well. I mean, I think there's been a lot of surprises, certainly, and shocks in the industry, and the changes of development cost charges, both at Metro Vancouver and at the township here. A little bit of guidance and direction for those developing or having businesses in the community. We are also hoping that certainly, I guess 3 things could indeed happen. Land costs due to a declining market could drop. That means perhaps construction costs with a little bit more competitive, that could drop a bit. And of course, maybe interest rates or other things may indeed, with election coming up, may indeed reduce itself. Instead of expecting 2 or 3 increases, they're not expecting any at all. So those are 3 things. And this is a challenging bylaw, but I think we have to do it because we're a growing community. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment. I'll just do it. Just change it. There you go. It carries unanimously. So back to the motion as amended. Councillor Ferguson, did you wish to say anything else?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Richter, on the motion as amended.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to call the question on the motion as amended. Carries unanimously. Move on to bylaws for consideration at 3rd reading, and this is rezoning application number 100572. Segra International Court, bylaw 5476. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, and second by Councillor Arneson. Any discussion? Councillor Long?
Well, Your Worship, there was some concern about ODA. Now, this is an industrial building, I believe. It's quite a fancy building, actually. It used to have gold production in there, I believe, or gold rendering or whatever they did. But will there be something that will address potential ODA issues, like filtration and so forth? That was brought up at the public hearing, that could be a concern. So I just want to make sure that we have that ability to address that if need be.
Your Worship, the rezoning conditions include number 3, engagement of a qualified professional to ensure design and incorporation of devices as necessary to control and mitigate odors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on H1. Carries unanimously. We move on to H2, is rezoning application number 100503, development permit application 100945, Generous Properties Limited, bylaw 5436. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson and a seconder. Councillor Kuntz, discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question on H2. That carries with Councillor Richter and Councillor Arneson opposed. Now we move on to bylaws for final adoption, and this is the Community Standards Bylaw, Bylaw 5448 and Bylaw 5449. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, second. Councillor Davis, Councillor Richter. Discussion.
Yes. Now, we had talked about deleting the 250-meter requirement from the unsightly premises bylaw. And if I'm reading this correctly, we haven't deleted it. So I'm wondering if we can delete that 250-meter requirement.
So,
Your Worship.
Yeah, we haven't considered that other yet. So I don't know if we. Mr. Safi?
Thank you. Sorry to anticipate. You might have referred that to staff. The policy is where the reference is made, Your Worship, to the 250 meters and not the bylaw. So that will be in the afternoon.
That's right. So we would, when we get to the afternoon meeting, we consider that. Then that won't affect this bylaw. So
okay.
Yeah.
So if we take it out in the afternoon one, because I really want to remove the 250-meter.
Yeah, that'll be discussed in the afternoon one. Yeah.
Okay.
So council will have that opportunity. Council Long?
You mean the afternoon this evening?
That's right. Okay. When we complete the afternoon meeting. That's right. You got it. All right. See no further discussion. I'll call the question on I1. And that carries unanimously. And move on to I2. Rezoning application number 100510, bylaw number 5400. And this is on Fraser Highway in Aldergrove. If I could have a motion, please.
I'll move it.
Councillor Long, second. Councillor Woodward, discussion on I2. Seeing none, call the question. Carries with Councillor Arneson and Councillor Davis opposed. And items from prior meetings. This is development permit application number 101016, Interface Architecture, 5600 block of 272 Street. Now, Ms. Bauer, this was deferred, so it's back on the table. So there's no mover or seconder. And I have totally lost the speakers list on what happened last time. So if there's any discussion, we'll just start over again. Any discussion? Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I appreciate all of the feedback that came forward and discussion that's been had regarding this proposal. So it is a development permit proposal. I just had a question before we carry on with the discussion or questions. Further through your worship to staff, I have a question regarding that's perfect. So the rendering that is on the screen, since the meeting, I've had an opportunity to look at the site and also to try and make an assessment of what I believe is an existing public pathway to the easterly side of the property. So I'm just wondering if staff could please clarify that there is an existing pathway, although it may currently be undergrown. Sorry, not undergrown, it's overgrown, which is the problem.
Mr. Steffi?
Your Worship, just to make sure I understand the question, is the question whether there is an existing pathway to the east of the property, near the eastern property line?
Okay, so the easterly property line closest to where the water body is flowing, I have a map that indicates a network of trails within the Gloucester industrial area. And what it shows is that on the easterly side of that property, the subject property, there is a pathway. However, I believe it's currently overgrown. So I just wanted to confirm and clarify that there is, as part of a community amenity that was already undertaken, a pathway that goes on the easterly side of the property.
A green buffer, Mr. Safi?
Your Worship, my understanding is that there is a restrictive covenant that prohibits any activity within the setback area of the stream that's along the eastern boundary of the property. So I'm not aware of any formal pathways. If there's something, it may be a informal pathway that's been created.
Okay. I guess it's a bit of a challenge at this point because I do have a map and it talks about proposed pathways, and I have looked at it and it does look like something has been created. It has trees that look like they were planted by somebody, not trees just volunteering to grow there. So it does look like something has happened. And why I'm asking this question is if there were to be a trail there and it abuts against the riparian area where the restrictive covenant is, I just wanted to make sure that the building footprint did not infringe in any way on an existing pathway that was there. That's why I'm challenged by looking at this drawing as opposed to looking at, I did look on the geosource map and it looked exactly like there was a path that went along the easterly edge and then went over further to the east. But I'm not an expert on trails in the Township of Langley.
Okay, thank you. Just Mr. Steffi, it appears to me that there's a protected green area on the easterly side, but I don't see a path or a trail that's part of that unless I just a hard time reading that. But I don't see that as part of our trail network.
That's correct, Your Worship. That's
might be an informal
consistent
trail.
with my earlier comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Woodward. Oh, sorry. I thought you were finished.
That's okay.
I apologize. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not quick enough. My understanding is because it's a development permit that any of conditions that we wish to apply to this property would be voluntary on the part of the proponent to take on. So I do have one, and it is having to do, and I'll just read it out in its entirety. That the site be improved with an environmental amenity to include an artificial wetland / ephemeral water body to enhance biodiversity and replicate the pre-existing wetlands on the site, and this amenity be registered on title under Section 2019 of the Land Titles Act. That would be a condition.
It's been moved and seconded as a condition, but it's not enforceable. It's a request.
That's correct.
Okay. Discussion on that, Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I was wondering if Councillor Arneson could just explain where she thought this should be located on the property.
Okay, back. Hang on.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
I guess I'm challenged to say with the building that more or less covers, with its parking lots and accessory uses, the entirety of the property. I wouldn't be willing to put myself in a situation and say where should it go, but I would refer to the fact that inexplicably, and it's sure it happens over time, the water bodies that we originally saw are no longer on the property. And so in light of the fact that however they went missing, I want to ensure that the right ecological result happens. And so it would be up to the proponent to work with staff to figure out where on the property this replication could take place. I don't know how big it needs to be, but what I'm trying to go after is our sustainability charter. And so this land, which is now being developed in 2019, I think should be more reflective of the fact that we have wetlands in and around the area. And so if it is dried out and we've lost that habitat, I would like an opportunity to replicate it, maybe in one of the planted areas. But as I say, I think the referral, it would be for the proponent, because it's voluntary, to work with staff to figure out where this could happen, because I think it's important that it is a consideration of this application going forward.
Councillor Richter, will you answer that?
I had something relative to another point.
Yep, no, you still have the floor.
Oh, Can I
We're
talk to the other one?
speaking to the amendment?
No,
or-
this is to the amendment. No,
Yeah.
I've got something
Okay,
after the
okay,
amendment.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, to the amendment, I'm not going to support it. I think the proponent has already addressed it with greenways. The building is there. I don't understand how this is can be affected. Again, it's a request. The proponent doesn't have to do it, but I don't even see why we'd even ask. I think it's been very complete, and the proponent in the past has done works in that area to assist with protection of the wetlands and habitat years ago, and so I'm not going to support this. Councillor Ferguson?
Well, yeah, don't know exactly what to say other than the proponent has an opportunity to present his case when when and if he gets a development permit as to what he has done as far as environmental measures, as far as DCCs, as far as working with staff, as far as other things regarding that. And if he and his team decide that there's other environmental issues that they wish to provide on site, that because there hasn't been an actual location, perhaps he can sit down with staff, but it's totally voluntary. I know that he and his team have got a number of things they wish to do on site, both as far as enhancement of the property and making a quality building, an environmental building, some kind of a LEEDs building, I understand as well, and some other things that they wish to do environmentally through carbon footprint and other things. He's certainly more than welcome to bring that to our attention and the measures and the steps beyond just building a building is going to be put into place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Well, Your Worship, I'm confused because I can't see anywhere on the site map that you could put that in.
The building needs to be
So that would change everything, wouldn't it? So I guess I need some direction from staff whether that's even possible. But so it's confusing to me. Do you see how it can happen, Your Worship?
Well, I think Councillor Arneson mentioned it, is changing the building, and that's not what this development permit is all about. The proponent would have to come back with another development permit if they change the building. So I don't know where it would go. It's already indicating where there's green spaces there. So, Mr. Seffi, is there anything else you can add? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, so on the amendment, I'm going to call the question. The amendment fails with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Kuntz, Mayor Froese, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Long opposed. And so back to the main motion. Councillor Woodward, you're next. There we go.
Yeah. So just, Mr. Mayor, if you just allow me a little bit of leeway, speaking to there's some gray area around the development permit. So, Ms. Bauer, I don't know if you can bring up that slide that I requested be brought up. Here we are. So I'm the one that moved the deferral of this for one meeting to have a bit of a closer look at some of the underlying authorizations and paperwork and approvals that went into the development permit. So I did appreciate the time to do that. This one has been a little bit of a work to track down. So I took a lot of the comments from the public hearing quite seriously. Development permit does not show authorization from senior level governments. Department of Fisheries has approved this development permit, ? Suggestions of wetlands preservation. Someone else noted that there's inadequate stormwater management plans for the area. And then the main one was that the DFO approvals that underline the works have expired. So I wanted to take 2 weeks to look into that. And again, appreciate the time to do that. And of course, please, Mr. Seffi, if I get any of this wrong, please correct me. So I did look into it and did request a copy of all the underlying approvals to try to grasp what's going on in this slide, that there is some exclusions from, we're going to go back almost 20 years now in regards to some streamside protection works, and some parcels are excluded from that and some are not. And that is just a historical record of the information. This particular application was part of a DFO exclusion from 2000, which has been extended to 2015. And the conditions of that were that a number of works could be completed, and they were permitted to be completed, which maybe wouldn't be permitted today. And those works were completed in time for the original approval directly from DFO to remove and eliminate some water courses in exchange for another series of additional works, which are all outlined in the document. And it was really helpful to dig into that and realize that this is a development permit, the works have been completed, and there's really no basis to go back and revisit that prior approval and prior work that's gone into preparing the site for this construction. And there was no requirement to get a development permit or approval for this design prior to 2015, and so now they're here in good faith, having followed through with these approvals and the conditions thereof, and are now here to build the building. And having looked into it, I appreciated those submissions, but there's a lot of confusion between development permit and rezonings. And you'll note there's a lot of land in here that's not currently rezoned, that it says very clearly lands where work's not completed before authorization. So we're in a process where Gloucester's transitioning maybe to new rules from old rules. And in the meantime, this one has to be supported and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's very helpful. Councillor Davis?
Yeah, just through question through you, Mayor Rose, to Raman, Mr. Steffi. Could you put the other picture up of that shows the building? Yeah, this picture on the yeah, okay. On the east, is that the covenants in green?
Through you, Your Worship, that's correct. On the eastern boundary here is where the watercourse is.
How wide would that be?
Your Worship, based on the authorization that Councillor Woodward just referenced, that was issued, I think, at the time of, well, actually, the rezoning occurred in 2007, so the authorization would have been, the authorization works would have been done sometime during 2007, or either before or just after 2007. In any case, all pre-2015. The covenant that was registered requires 11 meters to the north and 6 meters to the south. And sorry, the other way around. I apologize. I did write it down so to make sure I did not make a mistake. 11 meters to the south, 6 meters to the north, and that's the actual setback that has been provided as part of the covenant. The authorization required something less than that. So the covenant says 11, the authorization required 10.3. The covenant says 6, the authorization said 4.5. So in both cases, the registered covenant is in excess of the authorization approved by DFO.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yes, I just had a question through you to staff, Mr. Mayor, with regards to tree protection. I note on page 8 of the report that as part of the development permit application, the applicant proposes to provide 246 replacement trees, of which 66 will be planted on site, with funds for the remaining trees secured for tree planting on identified public lands. So my question to staff is, do we know where we're planting the remainder of these trees, and when will the trees be planted by?
Your Worship, that the trees that are potentially accommodated on the site will be done in conjunction with the development permit, with the building permit actually, application, post building permit, because of the fact that there may be some damage. So to try and minimize damage is typically done after the building has reached substantial completion, with the adequate securities having been obtained. And if there is inadequate space on the site, then it's a question of internal discussion to make sure that there is cash in lieu provided for planting of trees that cannot be accommodated on the site elsewhere in an adjacent or close by park or riparian area or greenway.
Okay, so it looks like there's over 150 trees that are not going to be accommodated on the site that will be accommodated elsewhere.
That's correct.
That's correct, okay.
And
the other question that I had, and it's sort of not directly related to this, but partially related to this, a lot of these applications that come through with replacement trees going on other sites, do we have an inventory of those replacement trees, and has that ever come to council?
Mr. Steffi, one thing I want to just make a comment, and maybe Mr. Steffi can then answer the question, but recently I was at the opening of the disc golf park on the reclaimed Jackson landfill. And Mr. Neufeld had said to me as we were walking through and looking at the trees, he said a lot of these trees were planted with monies provided by developers when they can't be planted on their property. So I was very happy to see that the trees were there, and it was an unsolicited comment, but he said, yeah, this is where we put some of our trees in parks like this. So, but Mr. Steffi, maybe you could help answer Councillor Richter's specific question.
The answer is yes, Your Worship. There is an inventory of locations where trees that could not be accommodated on development sites have been planted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on J1. That carries with Councillor Arneson opposed. And we now move on to the Mayor and Council report. Nice to see an audience for the Mayor and Council report. Captive audience, okay. Councillor Long says it's a captive audience. So, but good evening, everyone. And on Tuesday, May 28th, I attended the 2277 Seaforth Highlanders of Canadian Army Cadet Corps, and we saw them here earlier this evening. Their annual ceremonial review at Yorkson Creek Middle School. The young cadets demonstrated what they've learned from their training year, and awards were presented. They worked very hard to perform, and there were a lot of very proud parents there. On Friday, May 31st, was the gala for Kim's Angels at the Coast Hotel, and during the event, a ribbon cutting was held for her new vehicle, which is a former ambulance that has been outfitted to help with their outreach to the people that are homeless. On Saturday, June the 1st, was a busy and exciting day that started out with the official opening of the Raptors Knoll Disc Golf Course at the Jackman Wetlands Park. This park is truly remarkable, and the work that volunteers completed with help from local businesses and the township is really impressive. I encourage everyone to go out and try out the new disc golf course. And other than the cost of the disc, it's free to everyone. And there are 3 levels, 3 courses here, and right from beginners, intermediate to a competitive course. And there's going to be in about 2-3 weeks from now a large competition going there. So another asset to our inventory of great parks and things for people to do. And this is where some of those trees were planted I mentioned earlier. Later that day, we unveiled signage at a local pocket park in Springfield Village of Aldergrove. The park is now renamed after David Beggs, who had lived in the community since the early 70s and volunteered his time to cleaning up the park. Many family and friends were on hand commemorating the unveiling. Following that was a 746 Lightning Hawk annual ceremonial review at the Brookswood Secondary School. Congratulations to all the cadets, and a great job by everyone. And I should add, it's so good to see all those youth that are involved in cadets, and I know in a lot of other organizations, but a great bunch of young people that, and here we go, this is the group, a very large group, had pipes and drums, and did a good job. So then it was off to the 50th anniversary of the Langley 50 Rugby Club, kind of a different group than the cadets. It was well attended, and there was some beer that was consumed by the rugby club, but 50 years. And another great thing about this club is they're on a private facility, and it's open to the public for our people in Langley and elsewhere to join the club and play rugby. So great community support. On Sunday, June 2nd, I was pleased to be part of the Longines FEI Jumping Nations Cup of Canada, hosted by Thunderbird Show Park. And Canada won, by the way, and the jumper there, I should have written down her name, but it's Canadian, and she's local, and just her name escapes me right now, who's in the red there, and they did very well. On Monday, June 3rd, this year's Seniors of the Year were announced by the Langley Seniors Resource Society. Congratulations to Pat and Don Dangelmeyer, a couple who have been extremely active in our community. During the evening of June 3rd, I was happy to attend the graduation and scholarship presentation for Whitecliff Agile Learning Centre at Redwoods Golf Course. Last week, the Township of Langley celebrated Seniors Week, and my wife Debbie and I attended the annual Seniors Tea on Tuesday, June the 3rd at the Aldergrove Kinsman Centre, which is always a great event. Councillor Arneson also attended, and really appreciate that, because I know Councillor Arneson had just stepped off an airplane a few hours earlier, and he made it out to this, so that was good. Yeah. So this is the next event. Councillor Arneson attended the Patsy Cline impersonator last week at the West Langley Hall.
50
so
plus?
50.
Why is it 50 plus?
Well, we're waiting for you. Yeah.
Not too far away.
Not too far. It comes up quick. During the afternoon of June 4th, I attended the Scholarship Awards for Walnut Grove Senior Secondary School, and the Township of Langley provided 2 bursaries to 2 deserving students, and great to see, again, all these young people who achieve so much. And I have no idea how they have time for homework when they talk about all the other achievements that they do in the community and they're volunteering, yet here they are, top of the class. On Wednesday, June 5th, I attended the Zero Waste Committee Metro Vancouver Facilities Tour as chair of the committee, I found it very informative. There were 4 stops on the tour. Actually, there's 3 this time. Vancouver landfill, and I'd never been there, and this is where your trash goes. It has to go someplace, and certainly we're looking to achieve zero waste, but there is stuff that goes to the landfill, and this landfill is run and operated in a very efficient way, and with the environment in mind. Then off to the waste to energy facility in Burnaby, where 25% of Metro Vancouver's trash is incinerated and turns into electricity, which services about 16,000 homes. So they handle about 260,000 tons a year. It's about a quarter of our waste. So the emissions, always concerned about the emissions levels, but they're well within the regulated amounts that are allowed and monitored, not by Metro Vancouver because it's their own plant, but by the Ministry of Environment. Then we went off to the new Coquitlam Transfer Station Replacement Project site. So in Coquitlam, there'll be a new transfer station, and it's just construction is just beginning on that. No pictures of that. It was a construction site with some bulldozers. On Thursday, June 6th, was the annual Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce Golf Tournament. I wasn't able to attend the game, but I did enjoy a great dinner at Redwoods. And I know, I think Councillor Kuntz and Councillor Whitmarsh represented the township. You got 28th? No. Didn't you get an award? No, that was my group. My group that I wasn't with. You're second last. Okay, that's good. Second most honest. Yeah, there you go. On Saturday, June 8th, was another busy day for local events, starting with the Langley Secondary School's 110th anniversary. The 110th anniversary, the school has been there for 70 years, and in their research they found that it actually was a continuation of Langley Langley High School, or something like that moved there 70 years ago, and so they actually started in 1909. Also that evening was a wine and cheese event for the Langley Senior Secondary 110th Anniversary Legacy Fund. And then it was off to the Langley Environmental Heroes Awards. Congratulations to Honest to Goodness Farms for winning the Environmental Business Award. The individual award went to Carly Smart. And we presented our Member of Parliament, Mark Warawa, with a thank you plaque for his years of dedication and commitment to this annual event, which he began. And as some of you know, Mark is in hospital right now, just having undergone surgery for cancer. And his wife, Diane, was there to receive the plaque and that was on behalf of Mayor and Council, because Mark had started the Environmental Heroes Award 15 years ago for his passion for the environment. And so when he announced that he was not going to run again, I thought it would be appropriate that we provide him with a thank you from the township for the work that he's done in raising awareness. And so the Fraser Valley Relay for Life was also held here in Langley on Saturday afternoon. It was a great turnout with monies being donated to the Canadian Cancer Society. And there's there's Fergie, yeah, right in the bottom picture. Excellent. And I attended that also. Just several members of council attended the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention held May 31st to June 3rd in Quebec City. Councillor Arneson, Ferguson, Kuntz, Long, Richter, and Councillor Whitmarsh attended on behalf of the Township of Langley and came back much smarter and lots of good ideas. Staff are always worried when we go away on a conference. We come back with more ideas. So and I'd just like to note that City of Langley Mayor Val Vandenbroek was elected to the BC caucus of the FCM. So congratulations to the Mayor of the City of Langley, who will be representing our needs and wishes at FCM. Acting Mayor Long attended the CN Delegates Luncheon on Thursday, May 30th in Ottawa. Were you able to get a grant? Oh, sorry, Quebec City. I said Ottawa. Yeah, Quebec City. Councillor Ferguson, I attended that in 2012. We came back with a $25,000 grant, didn't we, on that one? That was a good lunch. Yeah. Oh, good. Where's the money? Yeah. Yeah. And Councillor Richter attended the welcoming for Dr. Zhang, a pilot from China who flew nonstop from mainland China to the Langley Regional Airport on Thursday, June 6th. And I know there's a book that... here, I'll put your mic on, Councillor Richter, and let you talk about this. I wasn't there.
I don't know if it was exactly nonstop.
Oh, okay.
He was flying a twin-engine plane.
Oh,
They
okay.
can only go for 6 hours at a time. But he did do, and this was his second trip around the world. His first trip resulted in this book, From Beijing to Beijing. And he's written it in both Mandarin and English, and he's got beautiful panoramic views of the trip that he took around the world. So he presented this to mayor and council, and with his sincere thanks for welcoming him to the Langley Municipal Airport. He also noted that this trip that he's on, he's doing in promotion of students and the work that students are doing, learning to be pilots. And I found out that we have 50 international Chinese students that are being trained at the Langley Flying School.
Yeah.
So I told Dr. Zhang that we would put this on display and then put it in the library for everybody to have a look at.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, I know our airport trained a lot of international students from all over the world, so good to highlight that. Thank you. Councillor Davis attended the Vanguard Senior Secondary Graduation Ceremony on Thursday, June the 6th. Thank you very much. And I'll put you on there.
Township bursary went to Madison Douglas.
Oh, congratulations, Madison. Thank you. And Councillor Whitmarsh attended the Langley Christian School grad ceremony on Friday, June 7th. Thank you. And Councillor Ferguson attended the Relay for Life and also Symphony No. 9, Ode to Joy, on Sunday, June 9th, and that was at the Langley Community Music School. Is that correct? And that, no, sorry, where was that?
The event, they're from the community music
from the community
school.
school.
The event was at the church in the valley on 224th there.
Yeah,
and Fraser Highway.
Right.
Yeah.
Was there a special commemoration year for that one too, or were they? No, just
50 years.
50
they
years.
Had the Bach choir and the youth orchestra.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Very good, excellent presentation.
Thanks. And just to let everyone be aware, there's going to be an official opening of the Rotary Interpretive Center at the Doubleday Arboretum. You see that big log building. That's going to be happening on June the 22nd, I think, at noon. So certainly looking forward to seeing that opening. And so with that, I will, is there anything that Council wants to add? Okay, we'll move on then. Is there any new business? Councillor Long.
Well, I also attended the change of command for E-Division.
Oh, that's right.
On
Yeah,
your
thank
behalf there, yeah. So,
thank you. So we have a new Deputy Commissioner in British Columbia. And
that's right. She was in attendance, and so now there's a transfer of command from Deputy Commissioner Brenda Butterworth Carr.
Yes.
Switched now to Deputy Commissioner Jennifer Strachan.
Great.
So she's
thank
now
you.
in charge of E-Division.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Richter.
Yes, I have a couple of things. I was just wondering if the tree inventory that we have from developers who weren't able to plant trees on their property could be perhaps circulated to mayor and council in the next items distributed list. And also, I would like to make a referral of the Western Toad Road closure request to staff for a plan around that this year.
Okay.
Possible.
So, Mr. Backen, can you take that as direction, or would you wish a motion? The referral, the tree inventory, I don't know how quickly that can come off. Is there any idea?
I thought we have to ask Mr. Seffi in terms of, Mr. Seffi, I heard you say that there was a location, but is there actually a tree-by-tree inventory or tree location? Can you elaborate?
Not an inventory per se, but I am certain, almost certain, that the number of trees planted at each location we have a record of. Not necessarily the species, I don't know, but the number of trees.
The location plus number of trees is what
statistical.
Yeah,
statistical.
I think what I was looking for is how many trees have developers paid for and how many have actually been planted. It doesn't matter what kind, just how many were planted.
Just some stats on that. And on the referral to staff regarding the Toad crossing, do you need a motion or direction?
I'll make that motion.
Sure, to refer the delegation to staff. Okay.
So
moved by Councillor Richter, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Enough of that. I'm just going to show of any discussion. I'm going to just ask for a show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? It carries unanimously. And is there any other business? Seeing none, a motion to terminate. Councillor Davis moves termination. Seconder. Councillor Long. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, for those of you that weren't here earlier, we didn't quite complete the afternoon meeting. We've adjourned it to after this meeting, so we're going to be returning to that, and we have some time to spend on that, and then we'll come back, or then we'll start the public input. So we'll just take a... Okay. All All right, so we will reconvene the regular afternoon meeting of Township of Langley Council. And we left off having dealt with F4, and now we move on to F5. And F5, okay, just a little background. F5 and F6 are very similar. This is just pre-approval for some equipment for the fire department. It doesn't affect our budget. It goes into next year's, but they need to get the order in. So moved by, who moved it? Councillor Long, second by Councillor Davis. Discussion. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on F5. That carries unanimously. And so F6, motion on F6, Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Woodward. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question on F6. That carries unanimously. And move on to F7. This is a heritage assessment for the former Aldergrove Fire Hall, number 3. It's a
I'm going to move it with the addition to the Township's community register.
Okay, so it's been moved to receipt and add to the Township resident. Okay, well, we'll get the motion. Moved by Councillor Long, second by Councillor Richter. Councillor Long, do you want to speak to that?
I just wanted to repeat it then, that the motion is that the building be considered for addition to the Township's community register, heritage register. It's part of the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? See none, I'll call a question on F7. Carries unanimously. Move on to F8. This is bylaw enforcement policy number 08101. This is, I need a motion. There's some revisions to bylaw enforcement. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh moves. Seconder? Second? Councillor Kunst? I'll open it to discussion. I think the one piece in here, there's several components to this bylaw. There's one piece that's probably going to take up most of the discussion, and that is that the provision that complaints have to come from within 250 meters of the property or area that the complainant has to live within 250 meters or has been removed. If council wishes to put it back in, that would require an amendment. So I'll go through a discussion on that. I would actually, after reading the report, I would actually prefer to have it put back in. There are some consequences of additional resources that are required, additional burden to our staff, according to the report, and perhaps a little bit later, staff could comment on that. But I'll open up for discussion. Councillor Long.
Yeah, Your Worship, I don't know why we would be changing it. I'm actually opposed to that, and I was quite supportive of the original staff report and the rationale that was provided within it, that it's a bylaw consideration that has been working over the years for the township. By changing it, we are going to have to look at more budgeting for staff. I know there might have been one instance, I think, a while ago that this policy may have caused some concern with members of council. I can't remember, it was quite a while ago, but I don't think that's sufficient to change the entire thing. So I would much rather leave it the way it is, but I always regret pushing the button first because everybody else talks after me and then we forget the important things I said in the beginning. But if it gets down to it, maybe we should look at a 500 meters or something, but to eliminate it, I think, is a real issue. And just imagine now that if you have no restriction of distance, all kinds of things. We're a very large township, and we're a very dynamic township, and so there would be lots of opportunities for people to muck around with it. So I think it's better off if it's a concern in your neighborhood, then I think that's legitimate, and I think that having a distance by which you have to be living to complain about a neighbor is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go through the list, and if you want to entertain an amendment to include the 250 or whatever. Councillor Richter?
I want to speak in favor of removing the 250. In other words, to leave the report the way it is. We did, as a council, receive a delegation not that long ago from a gentleman who lives up in the Salmon River Uplands area. And essentially, because the properties are larger up there, unless the neighbor right across the street is going to lodge the complaint, nobody else can make a complaint because the property lines are longer than 250 meters. So it makes sense that we remove this. The report does say on page 2 that the 250-meter radius requirement has been removed, which will likely trigger the need to increase bylaw enforcement resources in future years. I say take it out, let's see what happens. Let's give it a year. If it triggers more resources, we can revisit it then, or simply add more enforcement resources. But I have heard from a number of people, particularly in the more rural areas, that really feel it's necessary to take that restriction of 250 meters out.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, talking on the same topic area, I think the 250 meters is a good one. It's appropriate. I don't think that we really should be encouraging a community that has people driving around to all sorts of other neighborhoods trying to see if they can find something wrong in other neighborhoods. I think people should, in terms of complaints about certain properties or things in their neighbor, should focus on their particular neighborhoods. So I like the 250. I'd be open to extending it and making it a little bit bigger if we felt that the 250 was a little bit too narrow, but I do think it's important to have some level of restriction for that. And I think from a budget reason, I think anything we can do to try and keep the budget down, we should. So that makes sense, and it's easy to do. And so I'd be open to adjusting that, but I think we need to have some kind of restriction.
Mr. Backen, I just have a quick question following these comments I've heard. Is it possible that we would have in the ALR 500 meters and all other areas 250 meters? Is that something that can be done in a bylaw efficiently, or is just to allow for the concerns I've heard from Councillor Richter? And there are large properties out there, and it's like half a kilometer. It's not that much.
The definition could be split by location, zoning, or designation, but Mr. Seffi, perhaps your help. What will be the effect of the bylaw on the agricultural land reserve? Because I believe if any tree clearing is done for agricultural purposes, the bylaw will be ineffective unless we have the ministerial approval.
But it's only for approval. It's only for enforcement of bylaw. It's only for the bylaw officer to go out there. That's all it is for complaints.
This relates, Your Worship, to the bylaw enforcement policy, which captures, if you will, all of our bylaws. So not necessarily limited to tree protection, but also unsightly premises, also commercial vehicle parking on agricultural land reserve. So all of those bylaws that we do have with respect to use of property would come into play.
Just a policy. It would require, just to confirm, if we did that, it would not require approval by the Minister of Agriculture because it's just a policy. Is that correct?
That's correct. As to the policy, the question is, what can the policy enforce? And that was my underlying point, which the things that Mr. Seffi referenced are quite accurate, but any other bylaw that's purporting to affect agriculture could be problematic.
That's right. This is more of, okay, thank you. This is helpful. Councillor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Having read the report, I originally and still actually like the idea of taking away the radius that was initially in place. However, on page 3 of the staff report, it refers to a number of other communities that were vetted to see what their policies were. And Delta, I thought, had a good compromise position. So what they did, in trying to play Solomon and find a happy compromise, is complaints regarding unsightly properties within 200 meters will have priority. So I thought if we tried to structure a strategy around that, means that we are effectively allowing more complaints to flow through, but at the same time, we do have the ability to prioritize them based on the relative position in the radius to the property that's being complained about. So I actually thought that was a good idea and that council might want to consider that as a compromise.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I guess if you drive around the community, and I don't recommend it with your eyes closed, you're not bound to find anything. The challenge is, as we drive around this large community with quite a bit in the land reserve, you see more and more and more unsightly premises, and some more than others. Some storing vehicles, some operating equipment, some just parking cars, and some using other operations. I mean, The challenge is if we work with our staff, if we use the technology of today and write letters and we give warnings out, and it's the idea of compliance and getting folks to get the idea of compliance. Because if folks figure that they can get away with it, and then more will extend, and more of these type of things will happen. So I want to keep it with zero, as consistent with, I believe it's Maple Ridge and Delta and a few others. And I'm a big advocate for that, because in the past, when folks have come up to me and said, you know, just down the street from me, there's some kind of operation that is unsightly and stored vehicles and junk all over the place, and they couldn't do anything about it because they're further away. So I believe, let's try it out. Let's do the best we can. Let's work with our staff. Of course, we don't want somebody taking advantage of and complaining about everybody, but we can move on this. And the only people that gain from that is the Township of Langley, because we'll have a cleaner, better-looking community. And I think that's what we're all here for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, no, I listened to those comments. I appreciate that there may be some rationale for both sides. So this one's kind of an interesting one. The bylaw, though, when I read it, so some complaints will simply not be investigated. So I think maybe that mitigates some of the concern around the distance. So complaints were received by the township, not all complaints be investigated. For example, a frivolous complaint or a vexatious complaint. So fancy words, I had to look up vexatious. Is it easy, Councillor Long? Thank you so much for, you're so helpful.
Vexatious
very vexatious, helpful comment, yeah. So any complaint that is deemed to be persistent or an abuse of the complaint process, such as maybe driving around the township, finding a list of things to complain about, would probably end up at the bottom of the pile or just simply not addressed. So, for example, if someone lives 251 meters away from a property, they don't have the right to complain. So I think that if staff are suggesting and recommending that maybe we remove this distance limitation, there's other mechanisms in here to prioritize and treat complaints not all the same, and give it a try, rather than come up with some other metric which is going to have some other, if you're 1 kilometer and 1 meter away, you don't count. So maybe that we just give it a try as recommended. And I think it's inevitable that we're hiring more bylaw officers anyway, based upon some of the summaries of other municipalities have more resources than we do. And as I've said last year in September and October, I don't see the point of having a bylaw if we don't enforce it. So I think that by setting a boundary where people can't complain or have the right to have bylaws investigated and potentially acted upon, essentially is making the bylaw pointless. So I think that if we have bylaws, we should enforce them, and if staff need more resources, we should find a way to add them. Thanks.
Councillor Davis.
I'm kind of scared to talk about this because I live in a pretty messy place on my dairy at the end of the road, and my neighbors are very understanding. But 250 meters is about 800, or just about 800 feet. And I guess my problem is if you take away the 250, you're going to have maybe, nosy people walking, looking for, just looking for messy places. And I guess that, I don't know. I could see moving it a little higher, but I think we need a radius because, 800 feet or 1,000 feet is a long way, and in certain neighborhoods, I don't know. Just my comments. I think that we could take it out, but problem with that is, no, I think we should leave it in there. I feel that we need some sort of a radius because it just it's in your neighborhood now. It's, tidy your own neighborhood up. Keep it tidy, and then we'll all have tidy neighborhoods. Over.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
I would be hesitant to remove the radius. I'd like to maybe increase it to possibly 500 meters. I just think if we leave it for a year and all of a sudden for a whole year we get all kinds of complaints and then we decide that it's not a good idea, then how do we now change the rules again, which I think would be difficult. What if we tried it for a year at 500 meters and, see how that goes? But I just wouldn't want to see all of a sudden our bylaws guys getting all kinds of calls that they would have to check out each one. And now they're, doing a lot of running around for, some of these vexatious calls that they won't know they're vexatious until they check them out. So I would say to maybe just increase it by 500 meters.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Long, did you wish to make
I'd
an
like
amendment?
to propose that the 500 meters. I think it's very clear that there will be a need for more staff. It says right here, it doesn't say possibly, it says staff will be expected to come to us for more staff. We've always been on a complaint basis, and I think it works the best. It really does. I mean, if the neighbors aren't bothering you and you're not bothering them, just carry on. So, yes, I understand if you have a bylaw, it should be enforced, but by gosh, we'd have to have a huge police force to do that in terms of neighborhood complaints because of the township is so large. Anyway, I'd like to propose the 500 meters, and as has been said, I think that'd be a smart way to go.
Move an amendment to include the radius to be 500 meters. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kunst, someone open up that. I think we have a good discussion, but if anybody wants to add to that, Councillor Richter, and discuss this.
Yeah, I like what what Councillor Kuntz said with regards to we could increase it and try it. I'm just thinking from the point of view of the neighborhood that I live in, where the properties are 1 acre lots, like we have an obligation to protect the identity of as well of people who make complaints. So if you've got it at 250 meters, it can only be the neighbor beside you or the one across the street from you that's making the complaint, which kind of lets you figure out pretty easy who's complaining. Yeah, I could go with trying the 500 for a while.
Thank you.
If we're going to revisit it in a year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodward?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a bridge to die on for sure, but the 500 meters is to me not really big enough. So, I mean, if we have 7 bylaw officers, and other communities are, in the teens now, similar sized communities are a lot more than that. We are essentially saying that some bylaws, if you're a certain distance away, your complaint doesn't matter. Like, we're just not even going to consider it, where, you could put it to the bottom of the pile. I mean, I think staff are capable of prioritizing one complaints over another. And maybe if it's a slow bylaw day, they can get to one that's, 251 meters or 1,000 meters away, rather than saying we're just simply not going to process it and look at it. So, but in the end, I'm not going to fight too hard on this one. I just don't see the point in having bylaws that don't get enforced. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, it's because it's Langley. We don't need all those bylaw officers. We have people here that all get along. It's not like those other municipalities where they're all fighting each other. All right, I'm going to call a question. Just a joke. On the amendment. That's right. To 500 meters.
To 500?
Yeah. I like to think that Langley is a great place. And it carries with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Arneson opposed. So the motion as amended. Councillor Richter, you did you wish to speak to anything on the motion?
No,
okay.
So it's just going back to 500. Can we review it in a year's time?
I think so. Staff could take that as direction to bring it back and bring a report back on how this has been working out. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the question. It carries to Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Arneson opposed. And as correspondence, one piece of correspondence to receive, motion to receive. Councillor Whitmar, second. Councillor Ferguson, discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question on G1. Carries unanimously. And we move on to Seniors Advisory Committee and Council Priorities Committee minutes. Could I have a motion for those, please? Councillor Arneson moves second. Councillor Ferguson, Councillor. Oh, so there's any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question on H1. Carries unanimously. And items from prior meetings. This is a motion to reconsider, and I'll speak to it after it's been moved and seconded. So I'm going to move the reconsideration. And could I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Can we speak to reconsideration? Or yeah, the only reason I'm moving this is that it was a tie vote with one councillor member not here, so I thought it'd be fair to the proponent that we bring it to the next meeting with full council. So that's why it's on the table. I'm going to call the question on the reconsideration first, then we go to, if it's successful, then we go to the motion. This is on the reconsideration.
Sorry, I never voted. What was it?
This is on the, we haven't voted yet. It's on the reconsideration. So it's the motion is to reconsider. So we're not on the motion yet. We're just on the reconsideration. And that carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Davis opposed. So the motion is back on the floor. Ms. Bauer, again, just help me out here. Do we need to move and second it? So I'll move the recommendation. And if I could have a seconder, please. Councillor Kunst, discussion. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm very concerned because the vast majority of this property is on a very steep ravine leading down to the Salmon River. And if we divide this into 6 lots, I can see clear cutting going on galore, even if we do have a tree bylaw. So I can't support this. To me, we need to protect that ravine. We need to protect the Salmon River.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I-1. And that carries. Councillor Richter, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Davis opposed. And move on to other business, and I will now get Councillor Arneson. Hang on. Okay. We'll go in order here. Councillor Arneson, just give me a second. Okay, Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I think I'll just cut to the chase here, and I'll read the last 2 paragraphs because it's rather a lengthy motion. Oh, no, I need 3, sorry,
Yeah.
At the therefore be it resolved. Therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to review our current policy on beaver dam removal and alteration in order to reflect adherence to the following primary principles. Number 1, removal or alteration of beaver dams subject to the jurisdiction of the Township of Langley Local Authority or managed by the Township on behalf of private property owners will only be authorized with respect to imminent flooding or water damage from overheight water compounding that could negatively affect TOL infrastructure and for no other purpose or cause, and further that any necessary removal or lowering of beaver dams on township property or properties managed by the township conform to best management practices to ensure the protection of downstream and adjacent water quality and quantity, and that all such alterations only be undertaken in a manner that minimizes disturbance to the banks or bed of any water body or watercourse in support of critical wetland integrity protection.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it?
Mm-hmm. Do I have 10 minutes? Sorry, I'm joking, but it could take that long. Okay. So this motion was meant to reflect, as it references in the motion itself, about global warming. So there is a growing urgency. The taking action through TOL policies, I know there's been discussion about that, but in addition to what we can do on the larger scale, I think that each and everything that we do in the township needs to be responsive and respectful of how we can make resilient ecosystems in the township. I'm a member of the Climate Action Committee, and I'm aware that Metro is mapping ecologically sensitive areas throughout the region with a view to mitigate the erosion of these very important systems. Most particularly, wetlands are being lost at an exponential rate as development and engineering projects dewater areas for residential, commercial, and industrial use without consideration of the overall impact on this important resource. If anybody cares to, you can look online and see Metro materials, and they indicate there are very significant wetlands that exist in the Township of Langley, specifically a very large area in and around Highway 1 and 272nd Avenue. These wetlands include historic and naturalized areas that have created enhanced riparian and habitat due to the activity of local beaver populations. The reason why these wetlands persist and are maintained is due to the significant impact of nature's engineers, which are our beavers. Beavers' natural activities of dam building and impounding water play a very beneficial role in climate change, as it mitigates both excessive precipitation events as well as droughts, and hydrogeological impacts are reduced as a result of these wetlands. These wetlands also play a significant role in the creation of habitat for waterborne fowl, as well as other species who utilize the ponds for habitat and as a biological resource. Most of all, I think we really need to, excuse me.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Just looking at a beaver dam.
Yeah. Councillor Arnott, carry on.
Thank you.
It's okay, you can.
Point of order. Thank you. We currently need a sea change in our thinking about beavers as a potential threat to infrastructure and private property due to dated ideas about how to work with nature. In the age of global warming, it is most important that we review and assess all of our township policies to ensure that they harmonize and complement all of our climate mitigation activities. Therefore, I brought this motion forward for the township to review its beaver strategy and to create new guidelines that reflect the importance of wetlands in order to create a positive and beneficial coexistence with beavers on township-owned or managed properties.
Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I would like to move referral of this to the Ag Advisory Committee, because I've lived in the township and been on council long enough to know that there is a long-standing and ongoing debate between farmers and beavers. And while the points that Councillor Arneson is raising is very true with regards to climate change, I do think we need to consult with the agricultural community over this. So I'd make that referral to Ag Advisory.
Okay, so there's a motion to refer and a second by Councillor Davis, motion by Councillor Richter. Thank you for that, Councillor Richter. I do want to make a comment and a really big concern with the second paragraph. So if the Ag Advisory Committee could certainly take a look at that. You know, the rest of it I'm fine with, but the second paragraph in the motion here says that basically removal, imminent flooding or water damage from overheight water compounding that could negatively affect TOL infrastructure and for no other purpose. Very concerned about that. If there was if we were to do something and it's going to impact private property or farmland or someone's basement from flooding, this basically would say that we're not going to do anything about it when those beaver dams are on our property. So hopefully that can be taken to the Ag Advisory Committee and get some comments on that particular paragraph, because I have a lot of concerns with that. But I'm happy to send this over. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. I do appreciate the comments. I have no problem with this going to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. I would note, however, that the structure of the motion specifically talks about township properties or ones managed by the township. This does not consider private property, because what I recognize is people have the right to manage their own properties. So if you have beavers on your properties, it's not up to me to tell you how to manage them. There are best management practices and there are appropriate things to do. But this in particular was drafted so that we would not take a cavalier attitude towards animals that are actually creating something extremely beneficial. So I don't think we need to be alarmed. I don't think anybody in the township of Langley, including myself, is advocating that we are going to let our infrastructure or private property be destroyed. What I'm suggesting is we need to be very much more cautious about the fact that if we maintain this resource, that it is something that will be beneficial to all of us. So it's just a matter of management style. Many different things change and evolve over time. Policies change and evolve over time. And I would just point to Scotland, who got to the point where they totally extirpated their native beaver population. So there were no beavers left. And what happened? They were very unhappy there were no beavers, because then they had very diminished wetlands. And so they had to bring back the beavers. So why would we do that in the township of Langley? I'm not suggesting we're on a mission to get rid of all our beavers, but what I am suggesting is that they play a key role as a species and that we should do what is necessary to work with them in order to protect and maintain, as I talked about earlier, our wetlands that are very important to our overall well-being.
Thank you. No argument with that, just concerned about the wording here. we have to be very careful with the wording because it does indicate that if beavers dams on township property were affecting private property, we couldn't do anything about it. That's the way I read it. Maybe I'm wrong, but certainly want to make sure we're clear on that. So on the referral, Councillor Davis.
I don't see any reason why we shouldn't send it down to the Agriculture Advisory to see what their take is, because, we have the, in the Langley Sustainable Agriculture Foundation, they are promoting the, what's that, ecological study, and that's where if you have wetlands on your property, or if you have in sensitive, what they call it, sensitive environmental areas, that you can actually join up and promote it and get paid for making it better, and getting a lease to, and getting paid to have it there and just let it sit there. So I think it'd be a good idea. What would we be out? We'd be out 30 days or 2 months by the time they look at it and get their opinion back. So on the amendment, that's what I'm sorry for, Bob was acting like an eager beaver, and he was showing me a thing on a lake about a beaver. So I'm sorry about it. Anyhow.
All right, Councillor Long.
Interrupt me now if you like.
It would have been okay if you've been watching the basketball game, but looking at beavers.
No, I wasn't watching the basketball game.
What's going on?
Never mind.
Jeez, Steve.
Okay, where does the APFA fit in this, which is the Association for the Protection of Fur-Bearing Animals? Because we do work very closely with them and their recommendations on how to deal with the beaver situations, right? So, with this being referred to to that committee, I think they should be in the loop as well, because they are partners with us, are they not? Maybe your worship through to staff, that the association have come before council many times to explain their perspective and lend assistance on how to deal with them humanely and so forth. So they should be in the conversation so we don't repeat ourselves or get into a situation that is opposite to their point of view.
I think take that under.
No,
Sorry.
he's shaking his head.
Worship, we have one referral, which is to AAEEC. We can amend that, or we can add a separate motion to refer it to the fur bearers.
I think we should send it to the Agriculture Committee. We've had the fur bearers take on this, but I think we need to hear from our people. And then if council wants to make a further amendment once we've dealt or a referral, we could. But I think listening to our committee first.
So we'll go through this step first, then, and then see
if we need more information.
All right.
Thanks. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I'm just wondering now that Councillor Davis raised it, if we should also include the Langley Sustainable Ag Foundation, send it to them too.
They can show up for them.
Yeah.
Why don't we see if the Agriculture Advisory Committee wants to do that?
Okay, that's
we
fair.
send it to them and then start there and let them. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on the referral for J1. Carries unanimously. And the score is 103.97 for the Raptors. It's changed? Oh, mine's outdated. Okay, we're not going to go with the score every minute because it changes every minute on basketball. 106, 103 for Golden State. Okay, we've got time to go. Everything happens in the last 5 minutes, so we've got to wait. We'll wait till the end. All right, we're going to move on. Councillor Whitmarsh, I'm going to get you on. There we go.
Yes. All right, I'll just, this one isn't very long, so I'll just read it. Whereas at the April 15th, 2019 regular evening council meeting, council adopted a resolution directing staff to provide a tree protection bylaw for council's consideration. Whereas this resolution was amended to include a provision that allows residents to have the ability to move one tree every 24 months with no fee and no arborist report. And whereas the tree protection bylaw number 5478 has received first and second readings, but does not fully reflect the amendment, therefore council directs staff to amend the tree protection bylaw number 5487 to accurately reflect the amendment prior to providing it to council for consideration of third reading. I move.
Second by Councillor Richter. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call a question. Oh, Councillor Long, just on. Councillor Long?
Yes, Your Worship. We're moving into the public hearing right after this.
That's right.
So can
public
we
input.
wait until after that, or you prefer to have it done now?
It can be done either way. I think, it was my take on this is that there was that recommendation that Councillor Whitmarsh had made earlier on April 15th. The bylaws did come for first and second reading. Council was aware of the changes, but still accepted the change that had been put in, and it may have been in error by the staff, but that happens. I'm not too concerned. We were aware of it. We did pass it, but now Councillor Whitmarsh wants to ensure that the bylaw, or at least that this is reflective of what his intention was in the beginning.
And it's the same way.
So we can do it now, and then that way the public input opportunity, people are, we're all on the same page on this one. So I think that's why. Councillor Whitmarsh?
I was just going to say that same thing. Just I think it's good to have it ahead of the public input as opposed to after.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question now on J2. And carries unanimously. And J3, there have been some other dates that have been provided for November, but we just want to make sure that we're still okay with October 4th. So this will be a motion to receive, unless there's alternate direction. So Councillor Ferguson, second. Second, Councillor Davis, discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question on J3. Carries unanimously. And J4 is discussion of the 2020 Council calendar regarding the FCM Sustainable Communities Conference. So this is 2020 or 2019? Are we talking? Okay, so that's not until next year. So can we... prior to setting the council calendar for next year, for 2020, will you be looking at some conflicting, possible conflicts with FCM and UBCM, and then this will be taken into consideration because this is apparently a change in practice, Mr. Backen?
That's correct, Your Worship. We try to track the UBCM, FCM dates as best we can, but these are helpful to us as it shows other events that might be coming up. I can't predict what the 2020 calendar would look like yet.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Richter?
Do you want a motion? Because I know that a number of us that were at FCM were quite interested in going to the Sustainable Conference in 2020. So
I think we can deal with that. I think if staff is aware of it now, so they certainly will create the council calendar around this. So is that correct, Mr. Backen? Because that doesn't come out till what, December? We see the calendar.
Correct. That's correct, Your Worship. Yeah.
Okay. So I think they're aware of it. Just want to make sure everybody's aware.
okay, and I have one other item for other business.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead, Councillor Richter. You're on.
Okay. Item G1, which is the petition from Gary He with regards to parking fees for emergency patients. I know, Mr. Mayor, you're on a liaison committee with the Fraser Health Authority. I'd like to move a motion that we ask you to present that petition to Fraser Health for discussion at the next committee meeting.
I could do that. Yeah.
So I'll move that motion.
Okay, and second by Councillor Ferguson that the petition be forwarded to Fraser Health to the meeting. We'll do that. Is there discussion on that? Let's do a show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And Councillor Woodward, other business?
Yes, I wanted to. It went by pretty quickly with the Milshon registration, the direction to add it to the Community Heritage Register. I thought I'd leave it to new business to look at the implications now of the road that was intended to go through that area. And I know I discussed with staff a couple occasions potentially realigning the road on the other side of the intersection, but that proved to be complicated, Mr. Backen, if you recall that, based on the development permit progressing on the other side to the south of the Milshon property. So with the decision to register it, we're essentially abandoning the road. And I want to confirm that that's true, and I want something in writing in regards to that. And if that's a true direction of this, then I want to review the property ownership adjacent to this and the potential implications of that decision around the use of the building as well.
Mr. Backen.
Placing it on the Heritage Register means it has to be noted. So, for example, the last significant building on the Heritage Register that was processed was the Aldergrove Elementary School. If the goal is for the property to remain in perpetuity, you may want to either pass a motion or refer it to staff to do that, and then we can consider what it would mean. Right now, as it stands, the property would likely be as part of our inventory and would remain as such until there was a need to deal with it otherwise. At this point, there's no need because the road is not required, but at some point, future councils may want to put the road through there, in which case what would likely happen is there'd be a memorialization of the facility itself at some point, but that could be 10 or 20 years. If our goal is to put it into holding in perpetuity, we should probably look at a mechanism to do so.
Yeah, and I probably should have done this under the item on the agenda, so I apologize for that. But I think that there's it's in the report that simply registering it means that it has to be, like you said, commemorated in some way or incorporated some way into the future development of that area. And I don't think that's the perception of members of the public. So the members of the public might perceive that the building's going to remain, and that if once it's registered as a heritage asset, that we wouldn't necessarily be demolishing it. So I want to actually know what council's decision is around this. Maybe you can come back at a subsequent meeting with some more information on the implications of the road and how the building was purchased and the mechanisms that were used and the funding source that was used for that, how that might get reimbursed, and some of the decision making around the future use of that building.
Your Worship, the first part is relatively easy, but probably not all that relevant to the future use of the building. It's a bit like trying to predict traffic patterns 20 or 30 years down the road. So it's a challenging one, only in terms of trying to predict what it can actually look like or what it may be. And generally speaking, we comment that we can do the historical report. We have no plans at the present time to be moving forward with it. That'll be subject to a future council's decision. The registry simply notes it and provides notification of it, but the ultimate protection would, if the report should be how do we ultimately protect it so it can be saved in perpetuity, that may be a better way of framing it, because then we can actually start looking at that, because it's something we haven't come across before.
Yeah, and I just want to add, and then I'll let maybe the mayor dictate how or suggestions from yourself on the next steps on this. But I just want to make it clear that for everyone that is following this, that simply putting it on the register doesn't mean that it's saved. And that there's going to be more council direction or restrictive covenants or some other decisions around the road pattern in that area to save the building or simply preserve it for some period of time for some future council to deal with. That as long as everybody's aware that adding it to the register doesn't mean that it's saved. Is that correct?
That's correct. It doesn't save in perpetuity. It simply notes it's a heritage asset.
So I think I would like to have it come back in some form. I don't need to dictate the process, but some form where that decision gets finalized, not simply just adding it to a list of other properties.
Yeah, thank you. I think it does allow some latitude, and the last building that was on the heritage registry was the Aldergrove Elementary School, and elements of that were put into the new facility, and so it does allow for some options. And reading this report, it's a great building, but difficult to move. There's lots of challenges there, so I think we could do something to make it a heritage, protect it for the future, or we could leave it and know that it's been noted and allow us some latitude for the future. So I don't know, Mr. Backen, we just want to provide a memo. I'm comfortable with what happened here tonight, but it's up to council.
So, Your Worship, I think we're simply looking for your direction in terms of what to do. I mean, certainly it's a notable asset. Preserving any asset in perpetuity causes challenges. I mean, there's pros and cons, but I'm not quite sure what your direction is in terms of what we should be doing then.
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to clarify, because I think that if there's a perception that adding it to the register, we're somehow preserving it or not moving forward with the road plan, just to make it clear that I guess we've done that already, that's not necessarily the decision that was made. And it may be looking for a notice of motion in the future to maybe try to direct that process further, that if the goal is to preserve it and not build a road through it, that would require subsequent direction.
That's right.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that might be the way to handle it, Mr. Backen.
I think that's probably right.
I guess I can start from first principles. The asset, subject to the process that was outlined here tonight, will be noted on the registry. Does that save it in perpetuity? No, council always has the overriding ability to revisit that. Do we have any plans then, I guess, on the horizon to put the road through? No, because the traffic demands don't warrant it, and the building to the south does not need a development permit. It needs a building permit. It has that, and it's very much underway, so it's very close. Does this council, though, want to try to foreclose future councils, and this is a legitimate position to take, from ever dealing with that building and making sure that the road network goes around the building? That may be the question we want. So if the question is what mechanisms do we have to achieve that, that's fine, or is it maybe a report or a memo on options, the range of options, that's where we're unclear.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to note that, of course, the Aldergrove Elementary School was on the Heritage Registry, and the Heritage Registrar, the list, and it's no longer there. So I think that if there's some expectations amongst the community that this is a significant step, I think we should, I'm trying to clarify that, and now that I've done that, we can look maybe at some process in the future to re-examine this a bit further. But for now, we can just leave it for the future.
I think so. Thank you. Any other business? Seeing none, motion to terminate. Termination. Council Davis moves termination. Council Long seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll take the 7th inning stretch. Check the score on the game.
They won. The Raptors lost.
Oh.